The most ironic thing happened while I was actually writing Crush Your Career. I was on the phone one night, late with my son, who was then a sophomore in college, and he was 6 hours away from home. It had become pretty common for my son and I to have an every night conversation. He was really anxious about his future, which is a common hallmark emotion of his generation. And every night I would try to fix his problem, because that's what leaders do. They fix other people's problems, or that's what they want to do. And I kept trying to fix it until finally one night I said, "Son, what can I do to help?" I wish I'd asked that question long before I did, because that was the right question. And all he said is, "Mom, just tell me it's going to be okay." You know, sometimes it's really just about being vulnerable with our own path and our own struggles, whatever they were, letting them know what they were, and we were okay, and they're going to be okay too. Oftentimes what I found among my colleagues is that our own children sometimes don't listen to us, but other people's children will listen to us, or our children will listen to other people's parents, right? And so this is one of the great things Crush Your Career does. It's a perspective from another parent who's walked this journey with her own children, just like the journey you're walking with yours. And I hope that Crush Your Career can be a resource for you as you help guide your young people into a successful future. Hey, I get it. My children, I wrote 3 books on it and selected thousands of people to work for an organization, and yet my own children sometimes don't listen to me either. But maybe your children will listen to me, and I promise I'll treat them like my own.
Well, welcome to Victorious Friday. We are here once again with Dee Ann Turner. You know, Dee Ann, we were together about 6 months ago. I'm really happy and excited to have you return.
Thank you so much, Terence. It's great to be back with you.
It really is. Well, are you in the middle of a career change? Do you know someone who might be trying to get a job, keep a job, or even grow a career? Well, today we're going to talk about how to not only land that job, but how to crush it. How to crush your career helps readers to learn how to prepare for an interview. It helps them to use online networking, which is prevalent today in this COVID-19 environment, to find a job. And then how do you conquer the first 90 days on the job, which are most critical? And we're going to talk about that, how to manage that performance, how to succeed in a new leadership role, and so much more. Today, I'm talking with an expert in this field, Dee Ann Turner. For over 30 years, Dee Ann Turner has, my guest today, have selected thousands of candidates for roles within the Chick-fil-A organization. She has interviewed tens of thousands of people. She's seen it all, you know, and now on Victorious Family, she will share what she has learned, not only in her career, but also, you know, as an early age, she went through the same process and interviewed so many candidates for jobs. And you know what? She crushed it. Can you believe that building a successful career and living that life that you desire and dream of is right here at the foot of your fingerprints and your eyes? I love this new book, Dee Ann, Crush Your Career. Ace the interview, land that job, and launch the future. Talk to me, Dee Ann, about this new project of love that I'm sure you labored over, crushing your career.
It's really interesting how the book came about, Terence. Years ago, several years ago, Fox News had asked me to write a series on career advice I give to my own children. And I had been collecting notes on that for some time, especially as I was interviewing candidates. If I would learn something that I think, like later I'll coach the kids on this as they get older, so I tuck it away. And so finally I started writing those columns. Well, when Baker Books was talking to me about my second book, they wanted me to write this book about how to help people get a job. How do you interview? How do you get your resume ready? How do you connect on LinkedIn? How do you, once you get the job, how do you get your best performance? They wanted me to write about that. And they wanted the target audience to be 20 to 35-year-olds. And I pushed back a little bit. And this, now think about this, this was in the summer, maybe fall of 2019, right about the time I was releasing Bet on Talent. And I'm pushing back saying, wait a minute, that age group doesn't need this book. In fact, my own middle son, he had been on a job about 6 months and he had already been offered 3 new jobs. It's like, they don't need this. They have all the jobs they can get. Well, they insisted that's what I write about. So I began writing the book. I submitted the first draft on March 20th, 2020. And then we all know what happened. The world changed. In fact, I had to take the book back and start rewriting a lot because the rules changed also with COVID. So here we are, March of 2021. I actually thought, even as I was editing the book, oh, everything will be much better by then. But we're still in the midst of a lot of this, and not just for the young people that the book started out as a target audience, but for all those people in transition in their life too, because of the circumstances. So God knew the book that needed to be written, and I'm so thankful that he impressed upon the hearts of the people at Baker Publishing to keep pushing me, and that I listened in obedience to that.
There you go. Listen, obedience. Well, I have my copy. I'm loving it. I even have an autographed copy. So thank you for that. And, I want to start right from the beginning. We'll work through some of it, and I'll get your thoughts and opinion and how the Lord moved you. The first thing that really touched me is that you dedicated to your mom, Joyce. Man, what type of role influence did she have on your life?
Well, my mother had an amazing influence, obviously, for me to make that dedication to her of my third book. I realized that so much of what we share in a book is our own story, and my story really began with her. But I think what impressed me so much about my mother was what she sacrificed over the years. My mom met my dad in law school, but she never practiced law. She chose to stay at home with her kids, and she went back to work, still didn't practice law, went back to work to help pay for me to go to college when I went off to high school. But, she was one of those moms who gave everything to being a mother. She provide this great home life and allowed me every opportunity under the sun to experiment, to discover, to figure out exactly what I wanted to be. So that's where that all comes from.
Well, that's fantastic. And I see the foreword is done by my good friend, Dr. Tim. I think about when I look at what Tim Elmore talks about, he mentioned in the foreword kind of 5 descriptors, if you will. He says, I come to believe that people discover their sense of purpose in different ways. And he mentioned 5 different ways, and he described them this way. One is a thunderbolt. These people are experiencing an empathy, this idea about their career and calling at an early age, right? They have this moment of a brief season of time, and they get it figured out. I mean, these are the lucky ones, right? They grow up knowing from day one, this is what I'm going to do. This is my calling. This is how I'm going to work. I don't know a lot of those folks, but many, he talks about those thunderbolt people. Then 2, he says, walking through open doors. These people only understand bits and pieces, and their understanding unfolds in time as they walk through an open door. A new one opens. And then he talks about number 3, call from birth. For some reason, these individuals figure it out as children. They say things such as, I always knew I was supposed to be a nurse, or something of that nature. And once again, if only we were all so lucky, right? Number 4 quickly is growing awareness. He says, these people get a general idea for their direction. And as they move forward, that sketchy, kind of vision that they have, details start to fill in. And number 5 is guide on the side. Guide on the side. These individuals gain wisdom and direction from others who know them well or who knew how careers work. And they have mentors who coach them. And then finally, he goes on to say, as you may have guessed, most people, they don't identify with the thunderbolt, the one, hey, let's go, let's do it. And the ones that's called from birth. However, they kind of identify with number 2, 4, and 5, they kind of figure it out over time. And I find that to be true in many people's career. What's your thoughts on those 5 different types of people and experiences?
I think it's possible at different times that you might experience all of them. Now, I do agree with Tim that for for a lot of people, it's not a thunderbolt or something you know at birth. But I think about my own career, and I think I experienced all of that in finding my purpose from birth. For as long as I can remember, I knew I wanted to be a writer. That was my ultimate goal in life. Now, that wasn't my first job, even though that's what I was trying to do.
Yeah.
And then, I opened the a whole open door idea. So I end up at Chick-fil-A, and I'm interviewing for a job in advertising to use those journalism and writing skills. And I end up in human resources.
Mm.
And I really think it's just a short little visit on my way back to marketing. And
Yeah.
then I find out, no, that's not at all. And what I found out that my call was to help other people find their calling. So that was my thunderbolt moment, actually. And it happened to me about 2 years into it. I was like, I was supposed to go into full-time Christian service writing. And here I am doing this HR work in the corporate world. And it was like, oh, but this is what you're doing. This is what God has called you to do. So I think that along our life's path, and then, of course, I had those who helped me, who saw in me what I didn't see in myself. I had a tremendous mentor in Jimmy Collins, who was president of Chick-fil-A at the time, and he really helped me see all that. So I think that some people might experience one of those, and some of us might be fortunate enough to experience all of it to help us find our purpose.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, I love this introduction. You talked about ceiling and visibility unlimited, the CAVU. You know, well, I want to get into that a little bit because you talk about an experience, and you know, I love for you to just talk about it and unfold that whole concept a little bit. The spirit of CAVU.
Sure. Kavu, as it's called.
Yeah.
And I had never heard of that aviation term. It means, of course, ceiling and visibility unlimited. It's the most desirable conditions that a pilot wants to fly in. And where I first heard that was actually at former President, US President George H.W. Bush's funeral. And they talked about that Kavu was the word that they used to signal to the entire family that he had passed. You make that because then he would be in those perfect conditions of ceiling and visibility unlimited. And I got to thinking about that term, and that's really what I see for this generation. And even after COVID, even after all the things that have happened in the last year, I believe that there's endless possibility. That's what I believe for my own children. And especially as you're starting out, it's all out there for you. You got to make good decisions and good choices and take some steps. And sometimes there are going to be some setbacks. It's going to get a little cloudy and hazy up there, but eventually you'll find your way. And part of it is just having the confidence and the persistence and the determination to keep going, even when it's hard.
That is so good. That is so good. Well, Dee Ann, when I think about today coming out of COVID, we'll probably have somewhere between 30, 40,000 people out there looking for work. And so I want to get into this ace the interview, right? So we've got to get the interview, and we have to get in front of people, and we have to ace it to get that job. And so I'm going to jump right into getting a job.
Sure.
And you talked about just preparing your character, preparing your resume, and preparing online, different things. Talk to us about just getting the job, and how do we go about that process? I mean, your book has some valuable insights for just getting the job and, acing that interview in order to get the job. Can you share with us some thoughts around that?
Well, first you have to back up. And I think there are two things that you need to be really focused on. The first is knowing yourself. Before you even get out there and start looking, you got to know what you're going to sell. And so I think it's really important that you understand who you are. What's your objective? The resume is as much a tool for you to get that in line as it is for anybody who's going to receive it. What is your objective? What are the different jobs that you desire? And of course, we could get into how do you figure that out, but answering your question, what's your objective? And then next, what do you offer that the world needs? That's really the question, isn't it? What problems are there to be solved that you have the skills and experience? So you want to line that up in your mind. And then, what's important to you? What's your mission? What's your purpose? What are your values that you're looking for in an organization you're going to join? I use the framework, and remember this from the conversation we bet on talent. When I interviewed talent, I selected talent based on character, competency, and chemistry. And I actually encourage talent to use that framework for how they talk about their story. And so when you're preparing that resume, you want to be sure that it represents exactly who you are and you know who you are. The second thing you want to do is if you're going for an interview, you want to know the organizations that you're interviewing with. You want to know them very well. You want to already know what their culture is about. And today it's so easy to, all that information is literally at your fingertips. You want to learn as much as you can. So that's the character part of it, the culture of the organization. You want to learn about the competency part. What is this role all about? Does it meet my experience and background? And lastly, the chemistry. What is the team like? How do they work together? How do they get results together? So take all that, prepare your resume. By the way, your resume is just an introduction to you. It's not all, honestly, it's not all that important. So don't spend a lot of money on some fancy resume. Just make sure it's accurate, doesn't have any errors in it, it's neat, and it gives you a look. And of course, all of this is mostly going to be done online anyway. And then get it out there. Get a great LinkedIn profile, get into Indeed and other monster.com and other online platforms like that. And don't just put it out there, but actually work it. If you are interested in an organization, go to the LinkedIn profile of that organization, connect with the people that work for that organization. See if there's somebody that's an alumni of your school that works there and reach out to them. One of the things that I keep talking about is look for the helpers, as Mr. Rogers said, because there are people in organizations that are really thankful they have a job right now, and they're actually feeling called to help other people. So look for those people to help you. Go to those online networking meetings that are in your industry, and don't just show up, but engage and follow up with people that you meet there afterwards. That's how you're going to find the job, is that networking from person to person. And of course, right now, that's very different than what you would experience in the past of doing that. And then lastly, the thing that I want to highlight is when you get to the interview itself, go back to this competency, character, chemistry framework in your head, and be sure that that's what you're getting across as you tell stories and give examples. Don't assume that the person you're interviewing with is a skilled interviewer. Some are and some aren't. But you can help them so much that by the end of the interview, even if they weren't great at interviewing, you gave them the information. So there's a couple things I want to encourage you to do in that interview. Number one is that when you give an answer, you go ahead and give an example or a story that explains your answer. They may not ask for it, but they need that information. So go ahead and give it to them. The other thing you want to be sure you talk about with your experience is talk about results. Don't talk about the task. Sure, you've got to explain the responsibility you have, but tie that responsibility to the results that you achieved for your role, for your team, and for the organization, and how those results impacted both your team and organization.
Man, that's some good advice. I look back and I'm thinking through people that I've been interviewing lately. And it's so surprising to me that they come in and not even know about our organization. That's the basic question. What do you know about us, right? And people look and say, well, they give us the basic, what they saw on maybe the front page of the website or something. But your information here is so powerful that I'm reading and just helping people to not only, like you say, let's do some homework before. Let's make sure, we have things in order in terms of presenting ourselves in the most favorable way to land that job, to get that interview, land that job. So let's say we've done all of that, it's successful. All of our we're ready to go, and we go in and we get the interview, right? We land that interview, and all of a sudden things work well for us, and we get the job. We get hired. What's next?
Well, next is keeping the job and growing in the job. So,
Yes.
how do you do that? It's like I compare it to, when you get that job, it's like having a baby. Now, what do we do with it, right?
Mhm.
So I talk about it in the book, and people tell me it actually is one of their favorite chapters in the book is conquering the first 90 days.
Yes.
Um, because that's the game changer, game breaker for a lot of people. Now, I don't really know that this is as common as it once was. But when you and I were coming along, the 90 days represented a probationary period.
Mhm.
At Chick-fil-A, we didn't have that because we had such an intense selection process. We used to say your probationary period was the interview process. So that's
Yeah.
where the whole idea of 90 days comes from. But really, that's when you make or break it. And so, what do you want to do in those first 90 days? Well, the first thing you want to do is dig deeper into that culture of the organization. You want to understand how things get done and decisions are made. So, how do you do that? Well, by doing the second thing, you start off immediately building those relationships. Start with your team and then expand out to the other influencers in the organization. So, you know, invite them to coffee, or in the virtual world, invite them to a virtual coffee. My middle son works for an organization, and they actually have organized virtual coffees throughout the organization to build those relationships. So, ask for a 30-minute face to face Zoom time to get to know the different people on your team and then the influencers. So, you're going to do culture, you're going to do relationships. And then another really important thing is you and your boss, your leader, need to agree on the expectations of your role. You had some coming into it, obviously, that you understood from the job description and the interviewing process, but now it's getting the goals that match the role. What are the goals for the first 30 days? What will success look like? This is a great question. Mr. and Mrs. Boss, what will success look like to you in my first 30 days on the job? What will it look like in 60 days or 90 days or even in the first year? And that you agree on what the goals are and the results that are expected. There's lots of things you can do. There's one other thing that I add in there, and it's really for first time career people, and that's working on professionalism. That's a big part of your first 90 days is, kind of understanding what's acceptable in your environment, um, how people engage with one another, all the way down to what's appropriate to wear, either on virtual or in the office or wherever the location that you're working in. So there's some things around that, but I really think the most important things are that you dig into the culture, you focus on growing and building relationships right out of the gate, and then you understand the performance expectations.
Yes, absolutely. I think about it even in my own career. We talked about the three C's, right? Competency, character, and chemistry. And I find that as you get more mature and maybe higher level jobs, chemistry is so critical. And you mentioned in your book, all employees look for chemistry that matches the team. You said that there are several indicators I look for to ensure chemistry with the team. I just love these. You talked about collaboration and fit and approachability and resilience and agility. I find that a lot of people don't get to the next level or really crush that job or crush their career. Mainly, most are competent for the most. I mean, good
Mhm.
character, but the chemistry side, especially as you move up the ladder, becomes more and more critical, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things I talk about, my definition of chemistry is a little different
Mhm.
and grew over time. I think early on we used to think chemistry was, gosh, does people's, Myers Briggs, do their Enneagrams fit together? It was personality test type stuff about do people get along together? And yeah, chemistry is better when people get along, but that's not the best chemistry. The best chemistry is when you can bring people with diverse points of view
Yeah.
into the conversation, that people have collaboration skills that are so good that they can bring their diverse point of view, collaborate, and influence the rest of the group. When you have that kind of chemistry on a team, you're going to produce better results. So that's one of the things I think about with chemistry is that definition is just a little different.
That's good. Well, let's get to the big crushing your career. I want to talk about that because we not only want to land a job, right?
Mhm.
And do well in it and all of that. We want to crush it. Talk to me
Absolutely.
about this crushing your career. Give me some highlights. And you talk about a lot of things, Matt, from managing relationships to all types of things. But talk to me about maybe two or three of these ideas to crush that career, not just do well in it, but crush it.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about some of the highlights already of things that are
Mhm.
going to help make you be successful. And, I talk about three truths that I wish
Mhm.
I'd known about the world of work when I started out. And those involve building relationships, navigating landmines, and managing your own performance and development. Let's talk about landmines for a moment because, I talk about in this book that I don't just talk about my successes in my career, but even more so, I talk about some places I failed, some mistakes that I made, because I'm hoping that people who read this book will be able to bypass some of those mistakes. Even my own children, for example, since I talk about this is career advice I would give to them. So when I talk about navigating landmines, the first one that comes to mind, because this was a big one for me, I'm being very vulnerable with you. When I started out my career and into a few years of my career, I lacked self awareness. And I had no idea. Most people who lack self awareness don't know that. But I really struggled with that. I had some gaps. I had these intentions in my heart that wasn't their impact, and I had no idea. That's what really understanding self-awareness is understanding that gap between what you intend and how you actually impact others. And so that created some real challenges for me. I'll give you an example. So I was one of when I came into my job, I loved my job in human resources. I could not wait for Monday. That was kind of weird, but I really felt that I loved what I did. Um, I found my calling in it. So when you find your calling in it, once you understand that, it just, you almost, it's never worked to you. You just love it. And so I worked really hard, but I worked hard because I enjoyed it. Well, if you're on the outside looking at Dee Ann, that could look like somebody who's overly ambitious, who has her eye on some particular role, which was never the case. But I can certainly see why it looked that way. And I didn't have awareness to that. And so that impacted some relationships with my peers that didn't understand that I was just in love with my job. They thought I was in love with some other idea of some future title or so forth. And so when we have that awareness, then we can adjust our behavior accordingly. Well, how do we get that awareness? We have to have truth tellers in our lives and we have to be willing to listen to them. So I'm going to be even more vulnerable with you. There was a time when I had more feedback than I wanted. And I was just like, I don't want to listen to anything else. That was stupid. That was not a smart move because I was feeling rejected and I was feeling hurt and I just didn't want to hear any more feedback. Things turned around for me and my leadership improved. There were two things in my life that impacted me. One was that I became a parent. And when I became a parent, I realized that everybody was somebody's mom or dad or son or daughter, and that I wanted to treat the people that I was working with like I wanted those special people in my life treated. That was number one. And the second thing was when real truth tellers entered my life and I was willing to listen to what they told me. And so that's a big one for me. I counsel every young person that I work with on this issue. And I've seen some people who just have so much natural ability in that area and do really, really well. But this self awareness thing is a lot about an issue of the heart. And so I do a lot of coaching around that. That one's an important one. Another one that I've seen derail people is ego, when you don't know how to manage your own ego. And I write about that in the book and about how to, I give examples of people who really derailed themselves because they didn't work from a place of humility. You know, I, I love Mark 10:45 that says, even the Son of Man came um, not to be served, but to serve and to give his life a ransom for many. When we approach our work as serving others, and I don't mean in the way that some people take that, but I do mean truly we're here. That's our purpose. As Christians, that's our purpose is to serve. And so that includes the workplace as well. And when we approach it that way, really helps us on managing ego. And then enough can't be said about this whole idea of development. For some reason, sometimes we get really caught up in this idea that that's somebody else's job. Now, I hope everybody works for a company like I had the opportunity to work for, like Chick-fil-A, who was highly invested in developing their staff and budgeted to do so. Everybody in the organization had those opportunities. But my guess is that's pretty rare as I work with other clients. So as Jimmy Collins, the former president of Chick-fil-A, told me one time, it's a do-it-yourself world. And so if you're not being developed, don't blame that on somebody else, but take responsibility and read the books, take the e-courses, go to the conferences, network with the people, find your own mentor, do all of those things to help develop you. And, at the end of the day, if you don't get developed and you don't get where you want to go in your career, if you don't get to crush it because you didn't develop yourself, you can't turn around and blame the organization. You have to blame yourself for not taking advantage of the opportunities you could have created for yourself.
Wow. Well, today we are here with Dee Ann Turner. She's talking about her new book, Crush Your Career. And when I think about it, she's talking about acing the interview. She's talking about landing the job. She's talking about launching this great opportunity, this career for the future. And there's many reasons we want to look at this, Dee Ann. Think about this as we wrap up. There's young people out there. There's seasoned people out there. And we know how much our career impacts our life. And I want you to just take it wherever you want to take it, to kind of give some words of wisdom to people out there who might just be feeling either disenfranchised or maybe feeling like they're not thriving. Maybe they feel like they're not crushing their career. There are certainly some challenges that they're facing. What words of wisdom can you give them in addition to everything else you just shared? But just look into that camera and encourage my audience today who might be listening to this interview around crushing their career.
So I'll give you the advice I give my own children.
Mm-hmm.
Work is an important part of our life. I mean, for most everybody, we have to make a living to survive, right? So, and you spend a lot of time at work. And I don't think our identity or our happiness should come from work. I think we know where that identity comes from. But because we have to spend so much time making a living, then it might as well be something that we're fulfilled in. And so if you're not, there's no time like the present to start making that journey into discovery of what really satisfies you in your work. If you're in a career that's not fulfilling you, because when that happens, you take that to every other part of your life. You spend so much time at work that if you're not happy there, it's going to impact all of your relationships, the way you serve your community, and it's going to impact your physical health. So it's a high priority that you find the joy in the work that you do. So that is my heartfelt advice to you is, and the first place I start anytime when I don't know what to do is I pray about it. And I keep praying about it. And I find that, God starts opening the doors of what I need to make the next move. When I'll tell you a story real quick to end up here. I've told you all about loving my job at Chick-fil-A. And yet I took a voluntary early retirement package from Chick-fil-A. Why did I do that? Well, there were multiple reasons, but it was because the door opened. I told you that I knew from the time I was little, I was supposed to be a writer. That's what I wanted to do. And I could give you my whole history on what told me that, but I knew that's what I was supposed to do. And when this opportunity came about for about 100 Chick-fil-A employees, I was in a situation that I was not doing the work God created me to do any longer. I had moved into a new role to launch a new function in the organization, an important function. But God had created me to help organizations strengthen their culture and their talent systems. And so I knew that's what I was supposed to do. And I had this 2-book contract from Baker Publishing to do the thing I'd always wanted to do. So that was a huge decision. Here I was, I had a fulfilling, wonderful career, but the door opened to do that one thing that I still had left to do in life. And so all of that comes about when you dedicate yourself to finding that one thing. You pray about it, you ask God's guidance, and I believe it will come.
Wow. Well, I tell you, we've been benefiting from that decision and that open door decision. And well, this is a continuation from Bet on Talent, the first book that you put out, I believe. And you've been doing some great work, Dee Ann. We appreciate you. We appreciate your work. And now we're talking about Crush Your Career, which is your new book. Tell us the details. When is it coming out? Is it out? Where can we find it? What's the website? Just give us some quick details.
Sure, absolutely. Well, these two books, first of all, do connect together because Bet on Talent teaches leaders how to find and keep extraordinary talent. Crush Your Career teaches talent how to be extraordinary. And you can find out more about it at crushyourcareerbook.com. Also on my brand new website, deanturner.com. And then the book is out. It just released and is doing well. So I hope that you'll go to wherever you buy your books and pick up a copy. I hope that your followers will also follow me and pick up more content through Facebook at Dee Ann Turner Author, Instagram at Dee Ann Turner, Twitter at Dee Ann Turner, and on LinkedIn, Dee Ann Turner.
Well, there you have it. Let me encourage you to go out, not just buy one book. You need to buy 2 or 3 books, hand it to your friend, give every employee a copy of this book. Let me tell you, Dee Ann has crushed it. Just amazing as I've read through it. And she's going to be humble about it, but I'll just kind of this is already launched as the #1 book for those who are interviewing. So she's done a terrific job. Others think the same. Go out, get your copies today. And like I say, don't just buy one. Buy one for each employee and hand it to them. It'll be a great discussion at your employee sessions and so forth. Dee Ann, thank you once again for coming on. It's been a pleasure as always. And make sure that we all understand that we bet on talent. We bet on you to give us this advice because you have told us how to crush our career. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Terence. It's been my pleasure.